Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lounge Lab, the official podcast for the SKILLAB Project. For those of you that listen us for the first time, my name is Konstantinos Georgiou. I'm the project manager of SKILLAB, and today I'm very glad to have with me Ioannis Arapakis, who is the head of scientific research in Telefonica. Ioannis, thank you for being here with me. It's a pleasure.
Nice to meet you, Konstantinos. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you for accepting the invitation. And today our topic is it kind of moves away from upskilling in the strict sense because we want to talk about something that has been present in most systems of the world, most applications, most users use these things without even knowing that they use them. And this thing is recommender systems. So let's dive straight in. I would like you to tell us what is a recommender system and how have they evolved throughout the years.
A recommender system is a kind of personalized filter that determines, what to show to the user, what to show next to the user. For example, which movie to watch, which product they might be interested in buying, which job to look for, and so on. And it does so by observing different signals like clicks, views, purchases, ratings, time spent on something, and then it's essentially trying to guess what is the user going to like now, and how can we keep the user engaged over time.
Yes, very important.
And in terms of evolutions, as you asked, like the initial, let's say the early patterns that we were studying is like, okay, people who bought X also bought Y, and then we would use some kind of basic statistics and collaborative filtering techniques. So the initial models would look a lot like spreadsheets of user item scores, and these were actually quite good, quite effective at popularity prediction, let's say, and figuring out how can I find more of that same
stuff,
items that the user has liked.
Yes.
But not so good at nuance or identifying new items.
I see.
And then the next evolution was the matrix factorization and the deep learning techniques. Factorization model essentially compressed the users and items into vectors, embeddings. And they have been, and I believe Netflix and Spotify were among the early adopters of these techniques.
Yeah, Netflix is very good at its recommendations, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
and then came deep neural networks with and sequence models like RNNs and transformers that also started considering the temporal dimension, so the order and the context together. And the evolution of that was sequential or seq-to-seq recommender systems. So, and then the evolution was casting the problem now as reframing it as a sequential decision problem, where every recommendation provided by the model impacts the next state and the future rewards. And this is where reinforcement learning entered, and this is some of the work I've also pioneered doing along with some other colleagues.
I see.
Like Alexandros Karatsoglu, German Jose, Wang, and essentially what we do with reinforcement learning, we augment these standard next item models with a reinforcement learning head that optimizes long-term rewards or long-term goals like purchases or watch time, while still using the historical data. So this essentially head is added on top of the, let's say, the seq-to-seq model's loss function, and it introduced some kind of a differential reward that takes into account other objects, let's say, more long-term impact rather than the short-term objectives like accuracy.
Yeah, makes sense. To keep users in the long term, I suppose. And okay, yeah, this makes sense. And well, you mentioned historical data and building on the predicting the next items and reinforcement learning. So I would like to ask about LLMs. The next thing I would like to ask. So I suppose that LLMs can find an application in recommender system. Where do LLMs fit into this evolution of recommender systems, and how can they improve the recommendations, if they can improve the recommendations, of course?
Well, as we started deviating from, let's say, single objectives, and we wanted to tackle multiple objectives that may at times be conflicting, we started also exploring the application of large language models. And large language models act as world models or reward models, or even as the recommender engine itself.
Oh, that's
so. The advantages that they bring is that large language models can turn unstructured data like text, descriptions, reviews, CVs, job postings, and into numeric representations, semantic vectors. These representations, we can feed them into the classic recommenders or RL agents, and we can address tasks such as cold start recommendations or the long tail performance issue.
Oh, like when someone enters the system for the first time, so you have to profile him or her based. Okay, yeah, I see.
Exactly, which is a common problem for recommender systems, or it used to be. Large language models can also act as a model of the world, as a world model, and model, let's say, the state and the reward. So, given a user's history and a candidate item, a large language model can predict, for example, how good that recommendation is, and provides a better training feedback. So than handcrafted rewards, and that allows us also to achieve another thing, which is a kind of closed loop model where the output of the model can be used as input to retrain the model and improve it.
Yes, makes sense. Okay, so you have a constant feedback loop that retrains the model and improves it.
It can be used. It can be used for that purpose as well. So LLMs, I don't see them as at the moment as replacing classical recommendation algorithms, but rather than but more becoming this component, let's say that's metacognition component that understands the language, that can to some extent simulate the users, understand different kind of objectives that can be conflicting, and acts also as a recommender.
Yeah, I always had this this question in Netflix. When you have new series and movies, they have these tags, these labels for a movie, like action and horror. But sometimes they're very, very sophisticated. I have the question if these are generated by LLMs nowadays. But yeah, this would be interesting to to explore, because some of these labels are very random. But okay, so I would like to also ask you, okay, let's say that we develop a purely LLM-driven recommender who does all these things that you mentioned. Are there any risks or challenges in developing such a system? Is it wise to have only such systems in the market?
Well, I mean, we know by now that large language models suffer from hallucinations. So they can...
yes, exactly. That's why I'm asking.
Invent attributes, let's say, or be overconfident into the way they infer certain preferences that might not be existing. Also, if we use an LLM as a kind of reward model or as an environment, if we don't specify correctly the prompt, we might have an alignment issue, and human alignment is one of the, let's say, hot topics these days. We're still trying to understand how to align better the models with our human needs. There may be inherent biases and unfairness injected in the models.
Exactly.
Let's say behavior, which reflects basically historical inequalities that existed in the data that we used to train the. So if these exist, then this can really magnify, the LLM can magnify these. And then there is another issue which is related to the cost of doing this inference and the energy that we consume. So running, billion parameter level models can impact performance, can introduce latency, can also
Yes,
increase the
of course,
energy costs.
of course.
And then there is the question of privacy and data governance.
Always, yeah.
So, when you have to handle sensitive data like CVs, performance reviews, and so on, sending this to, let's say, third-party LLMs via an API or training LLMs on them without strict governance can be risky, if not illegal or unethical.
Okay, so you mentioned privacy and unethical practices, and that's a very solid point, because also taking into account that the LLM is as good as the data it has been trained on, which is very correct. So how can we ensure that such a system is transparent, it's fair, it doesn't distinguish between common inequalities that existed back in the day? So how can we ensure a fair recommendation system by LLMs, of course?
I think there are two possibilities here. The first one is to consider what exactly the model is trying to optimize, and then also how we expose this to the users. So with respect to the former, we need to make the objectives very explicit and also consider a breadth of objectives rather than focus on very few of them. Of the traditional one, let's say. So, for example, in our paper, a SMORL is a good template where we have this hidden notion of good by defining separate rewards for not just accuracy, but diversity or novelty of recommendations. And we do so in a very controlled way. So let's say in a recommender system that recommends skills to acquire, we can add explicit objectives like for fairness or coverage of underrepresented paths or long-term employability. So the key is fairness shouldn't be thought after post-training, but it should be part of the reward design.
Yes, exactly.
We should also keep the model simple, make this will allow to make the decision boundary auditable and reproducible, so rather than go for very complicated architectures. And also, we can benefit from the fact that LLMs can offer this kind of explainability. So they can generate in natural language explanations, and this can this align also with this conversational explainable AI work that is being done.
Yes.
Where users can ask why this over that, or what if I don't want X, and get an answer.
Particularly in, let's say, banking recommendation systems, which is very important to have explanations about the decisions. Yes, that's very important.
Absolutely. We also need to measure fairness and monitor it over time. So, for example, for skill and career recommendation, fairness might mean group fairness, like gender, age, region, as well as professional path fairness, like are we aiming at elite institutions? Are we considering non-elite institutions? And then we need to make audits, regular audits, to see, measure who gets which recommendations, how that differs by group.
Yes, of course.
How it shifts after the algorithm is changed. And maybe even provide some user controls, like essentially allow the users to decide, whether they want higher novelty or more safe choices.
This makes sense.
Short-term pay versus long-term growth. So in a way, the users can personalize the kind of recommendations that they receive.
Exactly, adapt the recommendation. Oh yes, this is. I mean, this is also, you involve the user in the loop. So that's, I think that for an individual using a system, this has some meaning, let's say. Okay. I like that you mentioned upskilling, because that would be my next question. let's circle back in SkillUp to put this all into perspective. So we have said in previous episodes that in SkillUp we want to create a platform for upskilling and reskilling, trying to evaluate the labor market. So how can a recommender system, which we do have a plan to incorporate a recommender system in SkillUp, how could this support upskilling and reskilling?
Well, I think an effective recommender system can act as a compass. It can help identify skill gaps, like from the CVs that it processes, the HR data, activity logs, job postings. It can infer a skill profile. So basically, what you know, how recently did you acquire these skills, how strongly these are, and combine it with also labor market data. It can estimate what you're missing for the roles that you are interested in.
The supply and demand, as we call it. Skill supply and skill demand.
Yeah. And then maybe it can provide you with pathways, not just recommend courses that you should take. Like, rather than saying, okay, here's a programming Python course, the recommender system can propose pathways. Okay, you should start with basic statistics, then move on to SQL, then Python for data analysis, then do this project. And by also considering, as I mentioned earlier, the multiple objectives, you can optimize simultaneously, not just for user engagement, but for skill coverage or long-term career value.
Yes.
And obviously, you can personalize that, and at the same time, maybe by monitoring not just the user skills, but also the market needs. You can nudge the user towards the desired direction and provide targeted learning suggestions instead of just
listing some courses and which is very old-fashioned, to be honest. Okay, so we have the recommendation system in place for SkillUp. So if we want to fit LLMs into this process, so how could we use LLMs to, maybe to rephrase it, can LLMs better interpret skill profiles, labor market needs, or maybe predict some emerging skills or job trends? How can we do that using LLMs? Can they do that in a satisfactory manner, at least?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think LLMs can serve particularly well at parsing all this unstructured data and text that we can acquire from CVs or LinkedIn profiles, like scrape the web, performance reviews, project descriptions, job postings, and all that, and deliver structured concepts. So or provide or standardized skill taxonomies, or create these latent skill embeddings,
yes.
which are language agnostic even. And they can also separate, I believe, core skills from soft skills, from domain knowledge, and all that. And this is where I think the LLMs can be very useful. But also, they can also do this matchmaking. So given a user skill profile and a target job,
occupational job.
Say, okay, what do you already cover? What's missing? Possible, ways to bridge the gap. Again, also considering real-time labor market signals.
Yes.
And I believe that is possibly already happening in industry. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if companies now process CVs using large language models, not just relying on HR.
Yeah, they probably do.
Yeah, to identify, let's say, the applicants that are the best fits for the role. But again, that also depends on how well you describe the role and you put in wording your expectations.
But we're still talking about profiling someone based on their current skills, but could an LLM be proficient in predicting emerging skills? For example, maybe we have a skill that is underrepresented in the current data, but can LLM say that, okay, listen up, this skill is going to be very important in the future, so you should have a look at it and design some strategies to approach it in your personnel, your workforce. Would this be reliable?
I think LLMs can definitely help in this task, can definitely help there, but I don't think they should be the only signal that we should consider. LLMs, like any kind of neural network, is essentially
A generator.
A generator, exactly.
Yes.
Well, a function approximator. So they are good at spotting patterns and relationships. So, but they are only as good as the data they've been trained on.
Yes.
And
you still need the expert opinion, of course, validation and.
Obviously.
I see.
And then they may come up with plausible names and descriptions for new roles or skills. But I think to validate this, we need to do this kind of trend detection or trend validation using time series labor market data.
Yes. Which we do in SKILLAB. We're currently in the process of.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So.
And there are limits and risks to be aware of. Like they can over-index some let's say concepts or based on hype on. For instance, metaverse appears a lot in the text that has been used to train the model. Doesn't mean it's a valid job trend.
Yes.
Also, LLM-based predictions should be treated as hypothesis.
Yes, as
not the ground truth.
As a supplement, let's say, to the expert opinion that is formulated by humans primarily. For me, at least, I like the use of LLMs because you have all these. I mean, we're in SKILLAB. We have been trying very hard to acquire data due to privacy and processes. But using an LLM, you have something that is trained on data that you don't have directly, but you kind of have them indirectly. Let's say so. This is their main function in the recommended system. But as you said, because you mentioned challenges, so I would like to ask you, what is the biggest challenge or challenges in creating such a recommender that can provide responsible and unbiased skill recommendations? So, what is the inherent challenge in designing such a system?
One of the main challenges would be the human alignment. So aligning the LLM with the human goals, while training it on potentially noisy and biased data. So what we've seen is that the data, the historical data that we use to train the model that it encodes, it may contain information about who was hired or trained, not necessarily who could have succeeded. And again, if you train a model on past transitions alone, then you can easily reinforce occupational segregation, like due to gender or let's say geographic region, and lock people into low mobility paths.
I see. Yeah, I haven't thought of that.
And then you may have also conflicting objectives. Maybe for upskilling, you care about accuracy, like, okay, is the job or course recommendation relevant to me? Fairness, like who gets recommended what?
Of course.
Diversity,
surely.
like am I being exposed to non-obvious paths? And then long-term outcomes like employability, wage growth, satisfaction, and so forth.
Yes, but then for reskilling, what's your? I mean, for upskilling, you consider fairness and learning paths. For what is it the same for reskilling? Adapting your skills to current levels.
I think that connects maybe to the lack of ground truth for counterfactual careers. So we rarely know what would have happened if we had followed a different learning or career path. Like if we had reskilled ourselves to a different set of skills.
Okay.
And that's makes it very hard to judge whether a recommendation was fair and beneficial or just similar to what other people did before you. So the biggest challenge, I think, is designing and validating the kind of objectives that promote fairness and upskilling under the bias data that we have available, and the policies, the labor policies that we follow.
Based on that, I think that given the country that I live in, Greece, I think that even if we had designed such a system and we said that, okay, it's responsible, it's unbiased, the recommendations are top notch and surely they will help you upskilling, reskilling. I think that in Greece, at least, the resistance to change is one of the biggest challenges, because even if you deliver something that it's proven that it works, the average employer may say that I'm fine the way that I am, so I don't want to use your system. And I think that it's not a design challenge per se. It's more like applying your system to the market, which is very challenging to incorporate such solutions to the market. So I think that in SKILLAB we must explore avenues to further incentivize people to use these things that we create. But yeah.
So what is the question here?
No, it's just an observation of mine, no question.
Observation. Yeah, no,
just my
I
2
agree.
cents in the conversation.
I don't think that it's just Greece alone. I think maybe this is more pronounced in Greece because I believe we are lagging behind in many ways that other European countries are moving forward with technology and with securing, society's capacity to distribute new jobs and develop the human resources it needs to cover these new needs. And I think AI may have a role to play there.
I agree.
It can definitely be a very useful tool to allow people to turn static, let's say, degrees to more dynamic skill portfolios. And I believe this has been happening in the past for many years. For example, in the US, when you go to a college, you major into something, but it's not a fixed degree. You decide your curriculum, right?
Yeah, sure.
What courses to take,
sure,
and so forth. So I believe in the near future we will have these AI career advisors or co-pilots, if you may, that will know about us and be aware of our current skills and interests, and then they will also help us navigate in the landscape and tell us, okay, look, based on what you want to do in the future,
yes,
these are the possible learning paths. And obviously, this don't need to be exhaustive. I mean, it could be some out of many, but it would be nice to have a kind of roadmap laid down for us.
Yeah.
Now the problem is, again, to what extent these can be personalized, because that's very important. Like to not just give recommendations that are the same for all people. Like you need to understand what that individual requires, in what ways this person is unique, and also to be inclusive.
Of course.
Like to democratize access to these to this resource, to these tools.
So you believe that in the future we'll have personalized educational advisors, and that the potential personnel will be more prepared and will know the requirements of the job market in advance. So we'll have better prepared workers that will more actively seek specific jobs that fit their interests, let's say, their skills, to be more precise.
I think so, but I think it's going to take some time before we figure out how to use these tools. the right way, because as we've seen in every new technology, there is a learning curve, and it takes a while until we can figure out the risks, the dangers, and the limitations. And we've seen this with diffusion models and generative AI. Like the moment we trained models that could create digital content from scratch, and let's say based on a textual description, we can create paintings like Van Gogh, or people
I
went
know.
crazy, like
I know it's kind of scary in quotes to think about, because I've seen this. For example, in less than 2 years, we went from this crappy video of Will Smith eating spaghetti to creating movies with Gen AI. So it's very interesting and frightening to think about at the same time. But
the problem with that is that on one hand there is an advantage to it. It enables every person to be creative or good at something, right? Because you give them the tools and they just need to know how to use the tools. Like you don't need to have any specific skills, let's say.
No.
But on the downside, I think we take away from this creative process the human factor, the human creativity.
Yeah.
Like imagine, a Mona Lisa painted perfectly symmetric. It wouldn't be Mona Lisa.
Yeah, it would be something else. I know the flaws is what makes something the way it is. So it's
unique.
unique.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I know. I've been thinking the same same things about art and generally Gen AI and LLMs in many factors. Okay, so it was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Ernst. It was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you
And
for saying so.
yeah, I enjoyed it, and I hope that we'll be able to talk more of these things in SKILLAB and apply some of them.
Absolutely.
So for those of us that hear us, this has been another episode of the Lounge Lab, the official SKILLAB podcast, and stay tuned for more.